What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with another Dragon Ball Super deck profile. After all the hype about all the new Android support coming out in Malicious Machinations, I wanted to go back and revisit some of the older Android support, and I never really got a good chance to play around with the Super 17 support. I did play it here and there, but I never really got a chance to explore it and get a good feel for the deck. So, I went ahead and built my own personal Super 17 deck. However, we're not playing with the Super 17 leader. Instead, we're playing with everybody's favorite android, Cell. Cell has a really good activate main. Once per turn, you can place a card underneath him, choose a card 3 or less, and KO it. So you get some early game board removal, and you also don't have to attack with this leader, so you're not giving your opponent cards needlessly from their life. And then when you're at 4 or less life, you get to draw 2 cards, flip him over, and you get Ultimate Life Form Cell. Now, his ability changes a little bit here. When you place a card underneath this card, you get to draw 2 cards. And then, when you remove 2 cards from underneath him and put him in the drop area, then you can KO any battle card on the board. So, he loses that restriction, but then you have to have 2 cards instead of 1. And every time you put 1 under him, you can draw 2. So, you're not really gaining any extra advantage with the draw 2, but you do get to control a little bit more what you have in your hand. And if you have any dead cards, you can go ahead and get rid of them. Now, the reason I like his ability for this deck in particular is because a lot of the cards play off of, a lot of the cards have the ability to play a card from the deck or the drop area. So, putting them under Cell to be able to KO stuff, and then pitching them to be able to KO stuff when he's awakened, puts them in the drop area, which then allows you to use them for your combo pieces. First up is one of my favorite cards for androids. It's Infernal Messenger. It's a 1 cost that lets you look at the top 10 cards of your deck and add any combination of 2 Android 17, Hellfighter 17, and Super 17 cards to your hand. Your leader has to be a green android to play this card, but obviously all the good android cards are green, with the exception of the new stuff coming out in Set 8. That's going to be your ideal turn 1 play. Turn 2, you're usually going to want to play Chi-Lai the Beautiful. It's a 2-cost battle card that says, once per turn, when one of your opponent's cards is KO'd, your opponent chooses a card and places it in their drop area. Obviously, with your leader being Cell, you can force that ability anytime you want by placing a card underneath him to destroy one of your opponent's battle cards. And then, because it is so easy to KO one of your opponent's battle cards, not just by battle, we ran 4 Surprise Attack Frieza. When one of your opponent's battle cards is KO'd, if you don't have one in your battle area, you can play him for free, and he's a 15k crit. So there's some kind of synergy there between Cell, Chi-Lai, and Frieza. We actually did a deck profile on this before for a green-yellow deck that focused more around the discard package and the Frieza's army cards. And we use that same combo in that deck as well. Then turn 3, you're usually going to want to play Hellfighter 17 Evil Revived. He's a 3-cost 15k with Barrier, and his Union Absorb says, place an Android 17 from your hand or drop area under this card, and play an Android Super 17 with an energy cost of 4 from your drop or deck, and play it on top of this card. So that's why placing cards underneath Cell doesn't really hurt you so much. It actually fuels your play strategy, because you're going to put them in the drop area, and then they're going to be there for Hellfighter 17's ability. Then, because the deck needs Android 17 to fuse with Hellfighter 17, we run 4 Endless Malice Android 17. It's not the best Android 17, but it is the cheapest for this deck, and in case you actually wanted to play him, he's an okay battle card to play. 2-drop, 10k, burst 3, he gains 5,000 and critical, but he's mainly there for the Union fusion to make Super 17. Our first Super 17 card is Super 17 to Further Heights. It's a 4-cost 20,000 with Barrier and Deflect, so you're not targeting him with anything, and you're not stopping him from coming into play. When he comes into play, you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. And then he has Union Absorb for 2 green and 2 other. You get to choose a Cell card from your drop area or your hand, put it under him, and choose a Super 17 with an energy cost of 6 from your deck or drop area and play it on top of this card. So he comes out, he's got ridiculous amount of protection, he can KO any of your opponent's cards, and he's going to be there to survive to set up for your fusion. Now, since you need a Cell to be able to Union Absorb into him, we run 4 Infernal Villainy Cell. It doesn't really matter which Cell you play. This one's alright just because you can combo it to draw a card. But ideally, you can also just put it underneath the cell leader and pitch it, and then once it's in the drop area, then you can use it for the Super 17's ability. Once you use Super 17 to further Heights ability, you're going to play Super 17 Cell Absorbed. He's a 6-drop, 20,000 with critical, dual attack, and deflect, so you're not going to stop him from coming out. Crit and dual attack is a really gross combination because that's going to be a lot of damage you can throw out there. And then for Sparking 10, if your leader's a green android, when he attacks, your opponent chooses 2 cards in their hand and places them in the drop area. So they're going to get 4 cards they're going to drop, plus the crit damage. So Super 17 Cell Absorbed is going to be the main focus of your deck. If for some reason you cannot go into that, or if you're getting to the point where the crit damage and the discard isn't so much necessary, and you just need to finish your opponent off, you can also play Super 17, the Infernal Machine. You can play him via the Hellfighter 17 instead of going to further heights. This card does not have deflect or anything, but he does have double strike, and his attacks cannot be negated. And when you play him, you can choose to discard 2 cards in your hand and make your opponent discard 2 cards as well. So 20,000 double strike that your opponent cannot counter. That's a pretty solid ability. Plus, you can discard 2 cards to make your opponent discard so that they no longer have as many cards to defend themselves. So he's a solid card in the deck as a finisher. Not as good as Cell Absorb 17, but still a solid card in my opinion. Then we run 2 Android 20 Vial Creator. When you combo with him, if you're comboing on a green Android card, he gains plus 5,000 and double strike. So he gains 10,000 and double strike, but he gains the double strike for the duration of the turn. So if you use that on the Super 17 Cell Absorbed, he's dual attack, double strike, crit, 30,000 for the first attack, 25,000 for the second attack. Again, that's a lot of damage, and then on top of that, the discard makes him a really, really strong finisher. Then, since your deck is all about hand control and androids, what better android is there than Stout-Hearted Android 16 for your super combo? He gets the 10,000 when you combo with him if your life is 4 or less, but instead of drawing a card, your opponent has to discard a card. So when you combo those together, multiple cards with some of the other cards in the deck, you can wipe out your opponent's hand pretty quickly. Then, since all your battle cards in this deck are green, and you do want to keep them alive on the board so you can keep using their abilities over and over again, we run 4 Sun Goten Deluge of Power. He's the pseudo super combo for green cards, gives you a 10,000 combo power. And lastly, because you do need to have a negate for this deck, I feel, we've got Shocking Death Ball. If your leader is green, you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards, energy cost 2 or less, and KO it after your negate. And if you have Sparking 5, then you can play the counter by taking a card from your life and adding it to your hand, which further fuels your ability to awaken with your leader and allow you to start getting more draws, more KOs, and putting more cards in the drop area. Now, androids have a lot of support, and green has a lot of support in general. One of the cards I really like playing with green, especially with green androids, is Dark Temptation Toa. You overwhelm her when you have 3 cards in your drop area, and if your leader is green or yellow, your opponent discards a card, and you give your leader 5,000 power. So what I would usually do is give the leader 5,000 power, attack with the leader, and then combo her so your leader has 25,000 power, and you still get the discard, and then you get an additional card in your drop. It's harder to play that card with this deck, though, just because then your Super 17 doesn't get his ability. You could, however, just forego the discard ability, because he's still going to have dual attack and crit, which is still pretty powerful if you combine it with the Dr. Giro combo card, but I don't feel like that one discard is worth throwing away 4 discards. But that is another option if you want to go that kind of route, or if you want to go more the route of the other 4-drop, the Tournament Pack promo, and not go the 6-drop at all, then you could do that as well. Since you're running Chilai, you could also run the Speedy Partner Limo. When you play him, if there's a Chilai in your battle area, your opponent discards a card. Now, he's 15k, which isn't terrible. 2 cost isn't too high either. The only thing I don't like about it is it kind of gets in the way of you being able to play Hellfighter 17, since he's cost 3 to play, and then you have to pay 4 to further heights to get into your 6-drop Super 17. So you don't really have the energy to spare with it, especially with this leader, since he's a draw 2 instead of an untap 2. However, there is Speedy Entrance Chilai, who is a blocker that says when one of your opponent's battle cards is KO'd, you can play her for free from your hand. That's an okay card if you needed a blocker. I'd say that'd be a pretty solid side deck card. If you had if you had a need to get rid of battle cards and Shocking Death Ball wasn't helping because they're, you know, higher than 2 cost, you could do Speedy Surprise Attack. Because your leader is a green android, you discard a card, KO a 3-drop or less, but you have the Cell leader, so I don't really think that's going to be too necessary. We do, however, get some really good counterplay cards for green with Hidden Power of the Saiyans. If your leader is green, your opponent can choose to place a battle card in their drop area instead of playing it, and if they do not, then they have to discard 2 cards. If the card has barrier, it cannot be chosen, so they have to discard 2, so that's a really cool interaction to be aware of. And then we've got the original green counterplay, which is Preemptive Strike, which forces your opponent's battle card 4 or less to be put in the drop area instead of being played. This one does not give them an option. It's guaranteed, but it only hits 4 or less. Then if you have battle cards that your opponent is attacking you with that can't be countered, their attack can't be negated or anything like that, then you can play Enraged Gohan Awakening. By discarding a card, you choose one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. So it gets around, because it doesn't negate the attack, it gets around cards that say their attack can't be negated, or, you know, whatever, stuff like that. Then that's a good way to get around that and get rid of that problematic card. There's also other good green support. There's other good green android support as well. You can play stuff like Father-Son Kamehameha. There's a lot of options for green now than there used to be in the early stages of the game. So I feel like green could be a solid contender. I feel like the Cell leader is a good leader. The lack of draw power on the Unawakened side might hurt him a little bit. The fact that he draws 2 instead of untapping 2 could be a bit of a hindrance as well to keep him meta. But there's also just better leaders to run. But because the Super 17 package does require a green android leader, I feel like Cell is the best green android leader for it, just because he's a little more versatile with his abilities. The android 17-18 leader doesn't really do anything for this deck. It would allow you to play the android 18 Deadly Defender for cheaper and give it a boost, and you could kind of defend yourself with that. But to me, I don't feel like that is worth it, since you're not really taking advantage of its abilities too well. And then the Super 17 leader, to me, just isn't that great overall. I know people have topped with it at regionals, but overall, putting your opponent from, 10 cards in hand down to 9. Now, if they have a super lot, then that's one thing, but ideally, this deck is all about hand advantage anyways. You're making your opponent discard cards, so I highly doubt they're going to have enough cards for you to really take advantage of that ability. And its unawakened abilities just aren't very flattering either. So overall, I feel like Cell is the best leader for the job for this particular deck. But that's going to wrap up this deck profile here. If you guys like the deck, if you guys are a fan of Super 17, I love the character, and I love the cards for the deck. It just seems like the deck doesn't have enough support. I know we have the Super 17 that came out of the draft box for. I don't have that. I don't really know that I feel it's necessary. It's not a terrible card, but the original Super 17, being able to hit your opponent for at least 2 crit and making them drop 4 cards is a really powerful ability in my opinion. So I feel like that might just be the better option. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Have you guys played Super 17 successfully? Have you found a better build for it than what I've got? Let me know in the comments below what has worked for you, or if you have any suggestions for our own particular build as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. With that, though, we're going to go ahead and get the frig out of here, and we'll see you guys in the next video.